She looked at the woman standing in the doorway of the hardware store and saw a problem. She saw the wrong skin. She saw a neighborhood she had decided didn't belong to that woman, and she saw an opportunity to make that very clear. What Diane Purcell didn't see was the medal sitting in a drawer at home on Elgin Street. She didn't see the 2 tours in Kandahar, the commendation from the Chief of Defense Staff, or the fact that she was about to pick a fight with one of the most decorated non-commissioned officers in the history of the Canadian Armed Forces. Purcell thought she was protecting her store. She was about to find out she was dismantling her own life, one bad decision at a time. The town of Millhaven Heights sits about 40 minutes east of Kingston, Ontario, in the kind of country where the Tim Hortons stays open until midnight and everybody waves at everybody else's truck. It's a place where the hardware store has been on the same corner since 1987, where the guy at the counter knows your father's name, and where strangers get noticed fast. Not because people are unfriendly, just because they pay attention. Master Corporal Adieze Nwosu Kamara had been paying attention to Millhaven Heights for about 3 weeks. She had moved into the house on Birchwood Crescent, a yellow-sided semi that needed a new back deck and a bathroom that didn't groan every time the tap ran, after accepting a posting to CFB Kingston. At 41, Adieze had the kind of face that had learned patience the hard way. She'd been in the army for 19 years. She had run supply convoys in temperatures that broke equipment. She had sat in meetings where generals argued over maps while sergeants made the actual decisions. She was not a woman easily rattled. On a Tuesday morning in late September, Adieze drove her blue Civic to Purcell's Home Hardware on Concession Road to pick up deck screws, a box of stainless steel lag bolts, and a tube of weatherproof caulking. She was wearing her civilian clothes, a fleece pullover, work pants, and steel-toed boots that had seen better days. She had a list written on the back of a Canadian Tire receipt. She was not browsing. She was not loitering. She was a woman with a job to do on her day off. Diane Purcell was 53 years old and had owned the store since her father passed it to her in 2009. She was not, by her own telling, a prejudiced person. She sponsored a girls' hockey team. She put a rainbow flag in the window every June. She donated to the food bank at Christmas. But there was something that happened in Diane Purcell's chest when she saw Adieze walk through the door. That Tuesday morning, a tightening, a narrowing of the eyes, a shift in her posture that she would later describe to herself as instinct. It was not instinct. It was something uglier dressed up in that word. Adieze found the deck screws in Aisle 4 and was reading the label on a caulking gun when she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn immediately. She had learned long ago that there was a difference between a sound that needed attention and a sound that wanted a reaction. "Can I help you find something?" Purcell said. Her tone was not the tone she used with the man in the baseball cap who'd been in the store for 20 minutes without picking up a single item. It was the tone she used when she wanted someone to feel watched. "I'm fine, thanks," Adieze said, without turning around. "Just reading the label. We don't allow people to open packages on the floor." Adieze looked at the caulking tube in her hand. It was sealed. The packaging was intact. She set it back on the shelf slowly, the way you set something down when you want to be absolutely certain no one can accuse you of anything. "I didn't open anything," she said. Purcell stepped closer. "I've been watching you since you came in." Adieze turned then. She looked at the woman directly. There was a particular expression that long-service military personnel develop over time. Not coldness exactly, but a kind of absolute stillness, like a lake in November. Adieze wore it naturally. "Then you'll have seen me walk in, go to Aisle 4, pick up screws and read a label," Adieze said. "I have a list. I'm building a deck." Purcell's assistant, a young man named Cody who had started 3 weeks ago and already regretted taking the job, appeared at the end of the aisle. He hovered uncertainly. "Do you have receipts for those?" Purcell asked, nodding at the box of screws already in Adaize's basket. "They were on the shelf," Adieze said. "I haven't bought anything yet. I'd like you to leave your basket at the counter while you shop." Adieze looked at her for a long moment. She understood exactly what was happening. She had understood it for 30 seconds already and had spent those 30 seconds deciding how to respond. The civilian part of her brain said to walk out. The 19-year soldier part said to stay very still and be very precise. "Why?" she asked. "Store policy. Is that posted somewhere?" Purcell's jaw tightened. "I'm asking you to leave the basket at the counter." I've shopped in hardware stores my entire adult life, Adaze said, keeping her voice level and clear. That's not a standard policy. I'd like to know the actual reason you're asking me to do that. Purcell took a step toward her. Cody, at the end of the aisle, took a step backward. I have the right to refuse service to anyone, Purcell said. You do, Adaze agreed. And I have the right to know why I'm being singled out. I came in with a list. I've been in this aisle for 4 minutes. I haven't touched anything I wasn't going to buy. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The store was not busy. There were 2 other customers, an older man near the paint section and a woman in a red coat reading something on her phone near the entrance. Both of them had stopped what they were doing. The older man had his head tilted slightly, the way people do when they can't believe what they're hearing but want to make sure. Adaze set her basket down on the floor very carefully, straightened up and looked at Diane Purcell. Before I leave, she said, I want you to understand something. You are asking me to leave because of how I look, not because of anything I've done. I want you to be clear about that in your own mind, because it's going to matter later. Purcell pointed at the door. Out. Adaze walked to the door. She was not hurried. She paused at the front, looked at the rack of paint stirrers, the display of weather stripping, the handwritten sign that said Millhaven Heights First Cincer, 1987. Then she walked out into the grey September morning. The woman in the red coat followed her outside. Her name was Patricia O.C. Whitfield, and she was 68 years old, retired from the Ontario College of Trades, and she had a voice like a woman who had spent 40 years on committees. She touched Adaze's arm gently. I got that on video, she said, holding up her phone. The whole thing from when she asked you to leave the basket. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Adaze looked at the phone. She looked at the woman. She felt something move through her that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but lived in the same neighborhood as both. Thank you, she said. She got the woman's number. What happened next did not happen because Adaze made phone calls, though she did. It did not happen because someone at CFB Kingston made a few discreet inquiries, though someone did. It happened because Diane Purcell had made the kind of mistake that reveals everything about a person on a morning when the wrong person happened to have her phone out and the right amount of time on her hands. Patricia O.C. Whitfield posted the video that evening with a caption that read, Watched a woman get told to leave Purcell's on Concession Road today for shopping while black. She was polite, she was patient, she was told to get out. Millhaven Heights, this is on us. It had 100 shares by midnight. By the following morning, it had been picked up by the Kingston Whig Standard online. By Thursday, it was on CBC radio. Cody, the assistant who had stood at the end of the aisle watching, submitted his resignation by text Thursday afternoon. He told a friend he couldn't say specifically what had happened inside that store, but that he wasn't going to be there anymore. His friend posted that too. Adaze did not watch any of this from her phone. She was under her deck frame on Thursday afternoon, drilling lag bolts into the ledger board she'd finally been able to buy at a different hardware store in Kingston. She worked methodically, the way she did everything, measuring twice and fastening tight. Her neighbour, a retired schoolteacher named Bernard Atcherby, leaned over the fence. You're all over the news, he said. She didn't look up. I know, you're very calm about it. She set down the drill, sat back on her heels and looked at the sky for a moment. It was the particular grey that Ontario does in autumn, heavy and low, the kind that means winter is only being polite by waiting. I've been calm in worse places, she said. Bernard didn't ask what she meant. He'd seen the uniform in the hallway when he helped her carry boxes in. He had a general sense. What he didn't know, what most people in Millhaven Heights didn't know yet, was the name printed on that uniform above the medals. Master Corporal Adaze Nwosu Kamara, 3 CMBG, Canadian Forces Base Edmonton prior. CFB Kingston, current posting. The recipients of the Chief of Defence Staff Commendation are not announced loudly. There is no parade. A letter comes, and a ceremony in a room that smells like wood polish, and then you go back to work. Adaze had gone back to work. She always did. On Friday morning, Diane Purcell arrived at the store to find 4 people standing on the sidewalk in front of it. They weren't shouting. They were just standing there, holding coffees, watching. By 11 o'clock, there were 11 people. By 2 in the afternoon, the sidewalk had enough people on it that Purcell had to ask a customer to use the side entrance. She put a post on the store's Facebook page. It read, We take all concerns about customer service seriously and are looking into the matter. Purcell's has served Millhaven Heights for 36 years, and we are committed to welcoming everyone. The comments section was closed within 40 minutes. The town began to talk in the way that small towns talk when something has cracked the surface of ordinary life. The hockey parents talked, the Legion talked, the Rotary Club talked. The man who ran the Foodland on Main Street posted a statement of support for Adieze, unprompted. The mayor, Gilles Tremblay-Ossé, issued a carefully worded press release about dignity and inclusion that said everything and committed to nothing. The high school, where Purcell's daughter played volleyball, cancelled a sponsorship conversation that had been ongoing for 3 weeks. Adieze, by Friday evening, had retained a lawyer, not because she'd been looking for a fight, because the lawyer called her. Her name was Constance Abiodun, and she was 45, and she worked out of Kingston, and she had seen the video 3 times before picking up the phone. "Tell me what happened," Abiodun told her. She was precise. She used no unnecessary words. She reported the sequence of events the way she had been trained to report incidents: time, location, observed behavior, spoken words, witnesses. Abiodun was quiet for a moment when she finished. "You know the Ontario Human Rights Code covers this," she said. "I know," Adieze said. "And you know you have a witness with a video." "I know, so the question is what you want." Adieze was quiet for a moment. "I want to build my deck," she said, "but I also want her to understand what she did, not just apologize, understand." Abiodun made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Let's see what we can do." The Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario does not move at the speed of Twitter, but the complaint was filed, and formal complaints have a way of clarifying things. For people who had previously thought the matter would blow over, Purcell's solicitor sent a letter. Abiodun replied. There were 2 sets of negotiations that came to nothing because Purcell, even then, kept inserting the phrase, "if there was any misunderstanding," into documents in a way that suggested she still hadn't understood what had happened. The matter did not go away. Meanwhile, the thing that changed Millhaven Heights was quieter and more durable than the video. The Millhaven Heights Community Standards Committee met in October, and for the first time in its 12-year history, someone raised a motion to adopt explicit anti-discrimination guidelines for local business licensing renewals. It passed. It wasn't law, it wasn't binding, but it was the first time anyone had written it down. Bernard Achaby, Adieze's neighbour, had been on that committee for 6 years. He told her about it over the fence. "You didn't have to do anything," he said, "just existed." "I was trying to buy deck screws," she said. He laughed. She almost did. The hearing before the adjudicator was in February, in a beige room in Kingston that smelled exactly like every government building Adieze had been in on 3 continents. Purcell sat at one table with her solicitor. Adieze sat at the other with Abiodun. Patricia Ozzie Whitfield gave her testimony by video call from her daughter's house in Guelph. Cody, the former assistant, had submitted a written statement. His statement said, "I witnessed the complainant behave in a manner that was entirely reasonable. I witnessed my employer ask her to leave without cause. I did not intervene, and I am ashamed of that. I am making this statement because it is the correct thing to do." The adjudicator read it without expression. Purcell's solicitor argued that the interaction had been a miscommunication, that the store policy around baskets was informal but real, and that there was no evidence of discriminatory intent. Abiodun stood up and said that intent was not the test under the Ontario Human Rights Code. Effect was the test. She said it calmly, and she only said it once. The adjudicator made no ruling that day. These things take time, but she asked Purcell directly, "Was there a sign posted about the basket policy?" There was not. Had other customers that morning been asked to leave their baskets at the counter? They had not. Was there any behavior on the part of the complainant that gave you cause to believe she intended to steal or damage merchandise? There was not. Purcell sat very still and looked at the table. Outside in the hallway afterward, Adieze stood with her coat over her arm and watched the February light come through the window. It was thin light, the kind that promises nothing but at least shows up. Abiodun came out and stood beside her. "It went well," she said. "I know," Adieze said. "You're still not happy." Adieze thought about this. "I'm not unhappy," she said finally. "I just keep thinking about what would have happened if Patricia hadn't had her phone out. If the older man in the paint section had just kept looking at his samples." Abiodun was quiet. "If I had just left," Adieze said. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." She put her coat on. "I told her it was going to matter later. I wanted to be right about that. The ruling came in April. The adjudicator found that Diane Purcell had violated Section 1 of the Ontario Human Rights Code by denying services to a customer on the basis of race. The finding included a note on the record of Purcell's home hardware. It included a requirement for anti-discrimination training for any staff. It included a public apology to be published in the local paper, and it included compensation of $14,000 to be paid to the complainant. Adaze donated the money to the Millhaven Heights Community Library Fund. She had been told they needed new computers for the kids section. Diane Purcell issued the apology. It was printed in the Millhaven Heights Herald on a Thursday, beneath a piece about the skating club's provincial results. It was 2 paragraphs long. It used the phrase, "I am sorry for the harm caused," which is not the same as, "I am sorry for what I did," but it was written by Purcell herself, without her solicitor, which surprised Abiodun. Maybe she understood, in the end. Maybe she didn't. That part of the story doesn't belong to Adaze. It belongs to Diane Purcell, and whatever she does with it in the privacy of her own conscience. What belongs to Adaze Nwosu Kamara is this. The deck she built that fall was solid, level, and properly weatherproofed. It held through the winter. When the snow came off it in April, the boards were still tight. She stood on it one morning with her coffee and watched the light come up over the back fence. Bernard was out early with his dog. He raised a hand. She raised her cup. She was not a victim. She was not a symbol. She was a master corporal, 19 years in, with a new posting and a deck she'd built herself, and a legal ruling that had added a small, hard fact to the public record of a town that would have to look at it forever. That's what composure does. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It just stays in the room and refuses to be moved. And then when the dust clears, it's still standing exactly where it started. Diane Purcell saw a woman in work clothes buying deck screws. She decided that was a problem. She was the only problem in that store. If this story stayed with you, hit like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Sounds of Justice. New stories every week. Stay steady, stay strong,